Lila stood at the edge of the village, her gaze fixed on the peak of the mountain that pierced the thick gray clouds. The villagers whispered warnings as they passed, pointing at the jagged cliffs with trembling fingers. "The mountain swallows those who dare," they said, their voices full of ancient fear. Lila ignored the omens. She tightened the straps of her worn leather bag, feeling the weight of 3 loaves of bread, 2 flasks of water, and her grandmother's red scarf. She did not look back at the safety of the houses. She turned her back on comfort and began her long ascent. The first hour was deceptively easy, with soft grass under her boots and the rhythmic sound of a nearby stream. But as the elevation increased, the ground shifted under her weight. Loose shale gave way, sending her sliding down the slope in a spray of gravel. She slammed her palms against the sharp rocks to stop her fall, scraping her skin raw. She sat in the dirt, breathing hard, watching the village shrink into a tiny cluster of dots. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she stood up, wiped the grit from her knees, and forced her feet to move again. Every step now required a choice. By midday, the sky turned a bruised purple. A sudden gale whipped around the cliffside, threatening to pull her off the narrow ledge into the abyss. Lila pressed her body flat against the cold stone, her fingers gripping a narrow crack until they turned white. In that crevice, she saw a small, pale flower, swaying violently but holding firm. She mimicked the plant, bracing her core and waiting for the gust to pass. When the wind died down, she climbed further. The air thinned and the temperature plummeted. Snow began to fall, dusting her hair and eyelashes. Her fingers grew numb, and her legs felt like lead weights. Every muscle screamed for her to stop. She reached into her bag, pulled out the red scarf, and wrapped it tightly around her neck. She focused only on the next 3 inches of rock, then the next. She stopped thinking about the summit and focused entirely on the placement of her boots. Her breath came in ragged white plumes. She pushed her hand over a final, icy ledge and pulled her body up with the last of her strength. Suddenly, the clouds broke apart. The sun hit her face with blinding intensity, a golden reward for her endurance. She stood on a flat, rocky plateau, looking out over a horizon that seemed to have no end. The world below was silent and vast. She took a deep breath, the air sharp and clean in her lungs. She had no flag to plant and no trophy to claim. She simply sat on the peak, watching the sunlight shift across the valleys in a dance of light and shadow. When she finally descended and walked back into the village square, the villagers stopped their work. They stared at her torn clothes and the red scarf that had survived the climb. One man stepped forward, his voice trembling with disbelief. "You reached the top?" he asked. Lila looked at the mountain, then back at the villagers. She reached into her bag and pulled out a single, small stone from the summit. "The mountain does not move," she said, placing the stone in his hand. "It only waits for someone to take the first step." The village fell silent as they realized the mountain was no longer a monster, but a path.